Or their women are like, I want you to be more vulnerable. But it's like, do you?
Do you?
Do you? Right? Or do you want it to be in a place that you can be comfortable with?
Yeah. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. And JLou, you've been going through some shifts recently.
Oh, God, we're right in there, aren't we?
Going right in. Talk to me about some of these things that you've been going through.
All right.
Big energy shifts.
Big energy shifts. I just feel like the last, I'd say 2.5, 3 years, I've been really intensely working on things. And I think just sort of on an exponential scale, I've sort of come to the point recently that all of those things are kind of coming into fruition. And there's been a lot of releasing and letting go. And I think as a byproduct of that, just physiologically, I've just been feeling lighter, more energetic, more on, like just brain fog's gone. It's just been an amazing transition. I think, it's almost hard to answer this question because I think I'm in it at the moment. I'm recalibrating what this experience is. But I think it's sort of been a consequence of really taking responsibility for my experience of life and how I feel day to day. And I think it came, like we're sort of speaking about 2.5, 3 years ago, sort of then, and for most of my life before that, I really lived in a place where I was very anxious. I just experienced depression. I had an eating disorder. You sort of have like these lists of things that I could tick off, a lot of them. And fortunately, I kind of got to a defining moment in my life where I began to learn that instead of this being a life sentence, which I truly thought it was for a moment there, that I was kind of like, this is it for me. And I'm just going to have to make the most of this sentence. Getting to a point that I was like, okay, I think I have the ability to figure this out and change things. And the first step for me was sort of taking responsibility in that. And certainly just that one choice in itself, in knowing that I have a sense of power in this, has certainly fueled me to get to where I am right now.
Well, I'd love you to tell us sort of the story and sort of paint a picture of what it was like when you were sort of like, this is my life sentence and this is going to be it. Where were you at? What were the relationships? What were the stuff happening? And then sort of the thought processes or some of the stories that you went through with either some of the coaching that you've done or the coaching that you've been a part of, and all these things which have given you permission to sort of, have a good energy shift. I'd love to hear it.
I think there's been a few moments in my life where I've had that. I think one of the biggest moments was when I had graduated with a double degree in law, politics, and international relations. And on graduation day, like a day that's really meant to be a day of celebration, I was really confused because I hadn't planned on what I was doing after that. And I realized on that day that I had dedicated 5.5 years of my life to doing something that I was not passionate about. And I had done it. I had originally started, to be honest, because I wanted to do sort of international law, a bit more humanitarian work, but very quickly that played into wanting status and money. And I liked the way that people received me when I said that. So it was really fueled by this sense of inadequacy for 5.5 years, which is pretty gnarly. So post-graduation, I sort of was like, well, I've got myself here. I need to go and work in law firms, which I did. And I was kind of jumping from job to job. And then sort of within the period of, I guess, 1.5 years after graduation, 2 years, I ended up working at a accountancy firm as an executive assistant to a CEO. And it was sort of one of those moments in life where I was really rubbing shoulders with the wealthy in Australia and the rich and famous, so to speak. And and my life was paved out for me. I was going to be really financially set up, and this was the dream life. And I had a boyfriend at the time that was really handsome, and all these like sort of boxes that we try and tick in life. It was like I was ticking them. And I remember one morning waking up and I couldn't get out of bed, and I was just sitting there and I was just bawling my eyes out, and I called into work and said I was unwell, but really I was just really depressed. And I remember filming myself. I'm actually trying to find where this video is. I'd love to go back to it now.
You filmed yourself? I
filmed myself because I knew it was a defining moment for my life, where it was like, I am worth more than this. Life is like a miracle. Like, I am a miracle by virtue of being here. And this is not what I fucking said. Like, this is not why I'm here. This is not the path that I want to take. And on that day, I made a decision that I was like, I need to uplift everything that's going on in my life. It's not working. I don't know where I'm meant to be going. Like, really, I have no idea. But I know that this experience right now is not it. And that's good enough for me. So I ended up quitting my job, breaking up with my boyfriend, just like all the things.
Big purge.
Moving out, like just like cut it all off. And I went overseas. I went back for the 4th time to Kenya. I'd done a lot of volunteering work. It was kind of like my safe place. But as life would have it, the universe delivers when you're not free. And within a few days, I found out that there was corruption happening within the organization, and I had to kind of make an ethical decision not to be a part of it. People that I called family, as I said, I'd been there 4 times. Like, this was something I was really invested in. And I remember laying on this like kind of like cold, ripped up lino floor that was over this kind of like cement, this old house in Kenya, and just like lying in the fetal position, just being like, I feel so alone. I feel so lost. I feel like physical pain right now of just feeling disconnected, separated, just no sense of direction or connection. That was like the moment for me. It was like kind of like the moment was in Australia, but then it was like, no, we're going to really show you that like you can cut off all the ties and you can try and run away, Jenna Louise, but wherever you go, there you are. And so you've ran away from all of this, and now you need to stop running away and you need to face it. So from that point on, I left my suitcase in Kenya, just took a tiny backpack and went to India. I literally Googled like best spiritual place to go to in India. Like, I'm not joking you. I was like, whatever comes up, I'm going there. And it was a place called Rishikesh in India. And I went there and I ended up spending 2 weeks there, and then getting a group of people to go to Nepal, and I trekked for about 6 to 8 weeks. And it was beautiful. It was raw. It was, I guess, starting to let go of who I thought I was. There was a lot of grieving, not like grieving for my relationship, grieving for my life, like, and what I knew it as.
Like for you, so like an ego death sort of.
In a sense, like it was facing what I ran away from, and understanding that I wasn't running to something, I was just running away from something. And the two, obviously through this experience, is in finding out that it was a process in coming home to me and getting to know me and starting to love me, and this disconnection and isolation and separation that I was feeling wasn't external, it was internal, and by virtue of that, it was external. And so that kind of fueled a few years of self-exploration, but I sort of moved overseas to Tunisia and Turkey for a while, and when I came back, I made a decision in coming back to Australia that it was like, I can go back into corporate and we can do this again. And you can go back into, taking 1,000 toilet breaks in the day because you're just crying in the bathroom. Or you can really...
There goes the alarm.
Yeah,
in a second, guys. Just having a quick cry.
I know, they're like, God, she goes in the bathroom a lot. Like, yeah. Or I could decide that this exploration that I'm doing can be also a courageous reflection and action in how would I live my life if I could do anything. And that's when I started getting into the mindset coaching. But as I'm sure you know, Corey, is like when you decide to get into coaching, very quickly you realize that like the first person you got to coach is yourself. So then it was like a continued journey of like, I'm going to be a mindset coach and I'm going to work in my own business and all this stuff. And then it was like, oh, I still have a lot of work to do. And I'm really integrous in that. And I didn't want to be someone that just kind of like I did a certification, but I didn't want to be someone that just kind of read a few scripts or something and then was just like, all right, I'm just going to like next client, I'm going to like read my script. It just felt really inauthentic to me. And so that's been the last 3 years for me, is understanding what pulled me in coaching, because it was my own self-development work, and then beginning to apply what has worked for me for other people.
And you've done like the most amount of reading and the most amount of research
of anyone
and the most amount of writing per anyone, even in Peter Crone's course when you're doing all the things and writing all the stuff.
I'm his highest achiever. I'm front seat with my legs crossed and my straightest back. Going, do you see me?
Yeah, right. Like look at all these beautiful articles, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then so sort of what's led to the energy shift like now, because it's been pretty recent, because you just went away recently.
Yeah.
You've been thinking and pondering and shifting and trying to move things through. When you say you coach yourself, first thing that you've done, like how have you coached yourself over the past, I think, couple of months in order to have a shift?
I really love the quote of Peter Crone's, where he said, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. I think that has been the most profound statement in my life, and something I've certainly been really implementing and integrating recently. And that sort of plays into this 100% responsibility kind of frame, is where in my life am I being triggered? And instead of being fearful of that experience or blaming others, projecting onto others, it's time for me to sit with these things and become aware of what it's truly saying about me. And most of the time, the stuff that you really don't want to go to is pretty ugly, but it's necessary. And I think this plays into sort of where we started in the sense of just me feeling energetically lighter. Like this stuff is held within our body. These traumatic experiences, and they don't have to be big, they can be small as well, is held within our body, and it's taking up our sense of vitality and energy. And so recently, for example, someone very close in my family, and I think this has probably been the biggest one for me. Family's the biggest one. I feel pretty resilient in other areas of my life, but family for me in my lifetime, this has been the biggest one, and particularly recently. And a realization that I had, which was really a blind spot for me, is that I had this deeply ingrained belief that I am not a good person, which is big.
Why?
It's not super clear. I think these things aren't always clear, right? Like, I mean, I can kind of like pan it out. Like, you know, there's things that have been said over the years, particularly we hold on to these things when we're younger and they become, you know, our own sense of truth, which is a lie. But they're our beliefs. And I think when I sort of think about how I've compensated for that, it really is this kind of aspect of people pleasing and ensuring that my environment and the people around me are happy and centered and feel good about themselves, so then I'm safe.
Ooh.
Right. So it's not about putting me first and being like, am I good? It's like, no, I have to make sure everyone around me is good for me to be good. So that's been a really big one for me, is developing more assertiveness, which I think you'll find this interesting, Corey. So I have a podcast called To Be Human, and I had John Gray on, which Corey absolutely loves, and I love a lot of the stuff that he teaches. But again, the universe will work in mysterious ways. He is the most listened to one of all my podcasts. I think I've done about 70 now. And but he is also the least favorite conversation of mine, because in that conversation, he brought an energy that I was, as a human being, and the experiences that I've had, uncomfortable with. It triggered me, to be honest with you. And he spoke for most of it, and he lost his way, and I lost power over this conversation. Literally yesterday, I get this really thought out comment on YouTube on this particular video, like completely seeing me, just being like, this interviewer, like, really lost her way with this stuff. Like, she lost control of the conversation, and et cetera, et cetera. And it was funny because I've never really had comments like this. I don't really get hate comments. I'm not big enough for that as of yet. But I walked in and said to my partner, I was like, I'd like to share this with you because it's triggered something in me and I need to share this. And I said, I don't know how to react. My initial response is this reactive response of being like defensive and justifying myself. And he kind of said, well, sometimes in my own experience with those comments, I'll just, kind of humanize myself and just kind of write back, like, if you agree with them, say, yeah, you're right. Like, I agree. So I ended up writing back to this person and saying, like, you're exactly right. Like, I lost my way on this conversation. I lost my power. And I said, this is something I'm working on personally, is my sense of assertiveness and sort of being able to, this was a big reason why I started this podcast, is because with me and my journey, my sense of self-expression has been really rough for me. I'm a very internal person. I write a lot. So it's really important to me to be able to speak that. And I wrote this to them and I said, thank you for being part of this journey. Like, I'm growing and I'm learning. And it felt really good. But it's like, it's a step in the direction of, instead of suppressing that stuff and putting it all the way down, it's like owning that, yeah, I've had challenges with assertiveness. I have challenges with setting boundaries. I have challenges with, I'm a pretty agreeable person, of being able to disagree with someone, have confrontation. But these are things that, like, really currently I'm working on, and that's like that being able to, like, lean into that, Corey, and just like really start really embracing that sense of power is been a massive part recently of those shifts, is just being able to be like, yeah, I'm afraid. I'm actually really afraid, and I get afraid and fearful in in situations that other people might not. They might be really bland. It could be just you and I sitting here, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm really afraid. but being able to not be to not feel shame around that. Like, I feel like there's so much shame in this world, and that's why I wanted to, like, humanize that comment on YouTube. Was just like, hey, the interviewer, that's me, and I'm a human, and I have my own lived experience, and yeah, like, I'm gonna fall short. Like, I'm in the arena. I'm literally started a podcast because I was afraid of self-expression. Like, I'm gonna fuck up, but it's being able to share that vulnerably and show up and be seen anyway.
Which is crazy, because what that does when you're in that position is, like, even though you're afraid and you're aware of the fear there, is that makes you come across as so strong and confident,
right,
and powerful and assertive.
Right.
That's because you know that, though.
Right.
And you're aware of it.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why, like, guys sort of reach out to you for coaching? Like, a lot of men reach out?
Yeah, isn't it fascinating?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that recently. I'm like, because, normally with coaching, like, women go to women, men go to men. And for some reason, men keep coming to me without me seeking them. And don't worry, I filter them out for the right reasons.
And it's not just men, by the way, people. I just say there's, like, some high performing,
some of the highest performers in Australia,
like $200 million worth, $100 million worth individuals seeking JLou out, which is nuts. So, like, sorry, I interrupted you, because it's pretty crazy that you attract that.
It's fascinating because I haven't sought it, and then I think that's what recently I've been really feeling into, is like, I try to be aware, like I'm a big believer in being a co-creator in this life with the universe. And so it's like when I be provided opportunities like that, I really want to lean into them, the ones that feel intuitively right to me. But I think something that I've been reflecting on recently is like the idea of vulnerability. And I know that you would love this, Corey, with the work that you do and Overcome the Chaos with your men, is like vulnerability is it's a necessity to be able to connect with people. And I think in this day and age, it's like we are putting more emphasis on that, but particularly when it comes to men, we still are in sort of a day and age where we're uncomfortable with it. And particularly as women, like if your man comes home and he's super vulnerable and he's saying, I'm afraid of this, you have to be a pretty big enough woman to be able to hold space for that.
Yeah.
And I think from our experience in society, like it doesn't really set us up as women to be able to handle that. So I think men are sometimes drawn to me because I'm able to, I'm a big enough woman to hold space for you when you were afraid.
That makes me emotional. You say
Yeah.
that.
Well, because I think, there's feminist movements and all this stuff. And it's like a lot of it's women against men and men, the patriarchy and all this stuff. And it's like, how you doing, guys? Like, your level of suicide rates is higher than women. Why aren't we talking about that more? Why is that happening? I'm so passionate about that. I want to be able to be part of creating a safe space for men to come to me and be like, yeah, I'm afraid, I'm not feeling super strong. I feel like I have to carry the world on my shoulders and I'm just really fucking tired.
It's crazy as well because it makes so much sense for people who, are succeeding and going through these things and going through the motion because they're usually doing it
right
for someone else or doing it for the family or providing and putting so much pressure on themselves so they can like feel worthy enough to just give and receive love.
Mm-hmm.
And then because they have no skills of vulnerability or fear of judgment, they're like, well, I can't.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or their women are like, I want you to be more vulnerable. But it's like, do you?
Do you?
Do you? Right? Or do you want it to be in a place that you can be comfortable with?
Yeah, all the time.
Because men are very good at doing that. They can give you a little, but they can also not give you the whole thing because they're afraid of how they'll be received. And that might depolarize you as a relationship. And you have to ensure as a woman that you can find a way to still be attracted to your man when he is not super in control, but see strength in the vulnerability, that he is strong enough as a man to be like, I am not okay.
Deep down, all guys know that. It's the second that we're vulnerable or the second that our partner is, leagues and bounds above us or they're in a really good state and like we're not in a good state, it makes us so scared because we're like,
right.
Oh God, she'll leave me.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not consistently doing all these things and staying on top of all of this stuff and providing all this space because I have to. And especially in a place right now, everyone's like equal. But then as soon as guys, because we're so sensitive to the second that like one tiny little thing that we could even think is a little bit of judgment. It's like, that's right, don't worry about it. I'll just go back to crushing it every day.
And that's the pattern of these high achievers, right? Is like, it's an uncomfortable space. So they go out and they achieve and they provide. And they're like, but I provided for you. But I'm finding with like a lot of these high achievers and high performers is that like, yeah, you like A++ on the report card for that one, guys. Like you have done so well. But like, and my this is a common one. Like my wife is so unappreciative of what I provided for her. And I'm like, okay, how present are you with her recently? How much time have you spent, like quality time, in being able to hold space with her and actually listen to what she's saying? Are you actually providing what she needs to feel fulfilled in this relationship? And I think a lot of them aren't because they don't understand that providing shelter and these like sort of necessary things, like the social connection between you and your partner, is just as important, if not more. Like I feel like
Than a lifestyle.
But if you don't believe that yourself, if you have garnered your value for your entire life, which is certainly something I spent most of my life doing, from your sense of achievement, you're not going to understand that. You're not going to understand that if everything fell away, you're still worthy and you're still enough.
Which is absolutely crazy. Because in one perception, like from my mind, I was like, well, you can take responsibility for that, for learning how to communicate and learning all the other things and having some mindset shifts and some perception shifts, which is one. And the second one's the people who like aren't at a level where they've like proven to themselves that they're like have done the success yet, and then they're like, I don't know what else to do. People who are like right at the starting line, who just keep getting in bad relationships and have another bad breakup, and they're not feeling worthy because they just get in there, and then they go, oh well, instead of achieving this, if I just focus on her, that'll be fine. And then they do the complete opposite, and they fucking hurt her too much, and the next minute she's left them. So there's like this crazy amount of skill, and like this void or this gap of like a skill at the moment. I don't know if you agree with this, of like finding the balance between like, okay, what's the, you know, level of success? How can I push it and keep pushing it as well as maintaining the relationship? And then at the same time, it's like, you know, how can I keep focusing on the relationship and at the same time have the success?
And I think that's where communication comes in.
Yeah.
Because like everyone's different. Like what works for me and Benj is different for you and Chloe. And I think there's not a sort of like a one for all. And that's what I love about coaching being like quite bespoke to some degree, is that like just communicate with your partner and say, hey, like, do you like what's going on here? Are you like fulfilled in this relationship? Like I'm a CEO, I'm executive, or, you know, whatever it may be. I'm working hard, I'm working long hours. Like, does this make you happy? And the person's probably going to say, no, it doesn't make me fully happy. But that's cool. Yeah. Have the conversation. Like, you guys are a team. Work on it. Like, this isn't about sacrifice. This is about connection and coming together and understanding that. Like, I love this, like saying it was just like, I think it was a Tony Robbins thing. It's like, you know, people like, but I did, like, I gave everything in their relationship. And he like turns around and he's like, you gave them everything but what they wanted.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I forgot to ask the person what they wanted. And I think it's really important, kind of going back to what you were saying as well. I think with relationships, particularly if you're sort of jumping from one to the other, or sort of, you know, things keep popping up for you guys. Like, I think a lot of mistakes that are made are that they try and sort of fix that one problem that's come up. And it's like whack-a-mole. It's like, okay, that problem's done. And then like another one will pop up the next week, and then another one. And it's an understanding that a lot of these problems are derived from like core beliefs, as you would know, Corey. And it's about really investigating, you know, going back to my example of I was like, I'm not a good person. Like, that was manifesting in many areas of my life, but I could play the whack-a-mole and I could keep trying to, like, you know, over here do something, over here fix something. But when I have that core belief of I'm not a good person, it's going to continually manifest in different areas of my life unless I deal with it. And in relationships, like a common one is like, you know, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. But you can like play the card of like, oh, this is just like a crap relationship, I'll go into the next one. And oh, why does this always happen to me? And it's like, well, we can explore that, and we can probably get to the bottom of it pretty quickly and start working on your relationship with yourself. Because particularly with relationships with other people, it's just a reflection of your own survival mechanism, your own fear of that person. It's not actually with that person. It's what that person triggers within you. And it's about developing that relationship with yourself so you can show up and be more present with that person and actually get to know them, instead of be reacting to the fear that they sort of, that comes up for you within that.
Hi everyone, thank you for listening to these podcasts and applying these concepts to your life and sharing these with all your friends and on your stories. I am seriously so full of gratitude. I am currently experiencing one of the best phases of my life, and I just want to share this with you. If you know someone, or if you're a man who is at that stage of your life where you're unclear with what to do next and you are self-sacrificing to help everyone else, saying yes to everything, doubting yourself, suffering from imposter syndrome, or you can't find your purpose, so you're constantly distracting yourself with hobbies, working too much, other distractions, or a partner or an ex. We are running a group coaching program for ambitious men called Overcome the Chaos for you, especially if you are someone who wants to network with other professionals, get support, learn the tools, and stop holding yourself back from becoming the best version of yourself. The first half of life, the scariest thing is living at your full potential. The scariest thing at the second half of life is never actually taking the leap. So please send me a message on Instagram saying ready, or apply through my website, coreyboutwell.com, and we'll point you in the right direction. So this also doesn't just show up like in relationships as well, because one thing it does that, but it also shows up in professional relationships and like your relationship with yourself and figuring like that out. I'd love to hear like your thoughts, especially on people who, sort of at a stage where they're like, okay, I've done some things and I want to take it to like another level or figure these things out so I can take that next step forward, but I'm stuck in here right now, like sort of, with their own relationship with themselves and their own minds in terms of unpacking that. Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess because as I shared, I do like quite bespoke, I'd kind of need to know more of that. But I think in terms of like expanding potential, like an exercise that I really love doing is, and it comes back to a Peter Crone exercise, is just kind of answering, like really getting into like a beautiful environment, like set up candles, like incense, like, everything, get in the vibe and answer the question, who am I in the absence of my concerns? And just really lean into that and just sort of write, like, if you were to go about your day not experiencing fear of anything, who would you be?
Ooh. Who would you be, JLou?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, to be honest with me, I because I do the work, I'm doing it. It doesn't mean you don't experience fear, but it gets you clear on what you would do if you didn't. And it paves a path for you to start exploring and start working on why you're fearful of whatever it is that speaks true to your essence. Because I think, we talk about authenticity. For me, like, your essence is just whoever you are in the absence of fear. And we all, in my belief, we have unique expressions. And I think the beautiful work is kind of like, I love the idea of like aligning the personality with the soul. So it's like we come in with our unique expressions. We're born here. And life's purpose is to explore that essence and to align our mind and body with it.
Whoa, there's like so many things in my brain that I started thinking about. I got like in trance, I got stumped for a second then. And I was like, holy. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say to you, I mean, with the power of that question, because it is, I think these questions kind of cut to the chase, right? It's kind of like we can do all these different sort of exercises, but it's something like that it's like, well, here I have in front of me. It might not be 100% accurate, but it's certainly on the way to that. When you think about that, like what comes up for you, like speaking of which, like who would you be in the absence of your concerns? Is there anything that like popped up for you in that moment?
Yeah, it was. And it wasn't so much of like who I actually am. It was more just because obviously everyone, I believe, is on a path of growth and, moving forward with things. And it's like just recognizing for me, I'm like, oh, there's been so many moments that you have without the fear where you just sort of just like, whoa,
right,
for whatever you're doing. And if you're not getting those, and Joseph Campbell talks about it, moments of awe, which is what I'm assuming now, making the connection in my brain is like a moment of awe is a pure moment without fear. Quote by Corey, guys. But thank you, JLou, for getting there. But I think that, the more of those that you have, like the better it is.
Right.
If I've got like a sales call or something and I'm getting someone to jump on to overcome the chaos and they're like breaking down all these different things and we're about to sign up, it's going to be like an awesome journey. And I'm not showing up as in like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough or maybe the program's not good enough or all these things, which it is. It's just the ego coming in, the fear. Every time that I haven't, it's been like the best connection ever. And the person's coming in and crush the course. And which had like the best fun. And the more that I do those things and expose myself to them, it's like there's more moments of just like, oh, let's go.
And that's the thing, like this idea of awe, which I certainly really buy into, like the power of awe, like I try and experience on a daily basis, is these things, like, don't limit yourself by thinking an experience like awe or of joy has to be like found in extraordinary moments, right? Like a lot of us live mundane lives, you know,
we compare it on social media. So doing this crazy thing. That must feel just fantastic.
For most of that is bullshit. Like, come on, let's start being a bit more honest in social media. I think it would be really good for mental health. But in understanding that, like I have a gratitude practice at nighttime, and so it's really simple. I'm grateful for 4 different areas of my life. One being, I'll say something I'm really grateful to myself about myself. So tonight I assume it will be like having the courage to go on Corey's podcast and, you know, show up and be seen. And then I'm grateful for another person, which I assume will be amazing, you being able to have these experiences with such great friends. The other one is sort of something into like nature. So I'm like grateful for the beautiful fresh air or like the smell of a flower or, you know, whatever it may be for you. And then the 4th one is like my connection with the universe and thanking the universe for like everything that it provided today. And then like I took action on these opportunities. But it's like they don't, as I said, like, you know, these things don't have to be grand. They don't have, like, you know, if you just laid in bed and were sick all day, there's still things to be grateful for, like that you're alive. But there's so much, like, I think a lot of us get stuck in you know, it's just that lack of gratitude. I think gratitude's almost like in partnership with this sense of awe, that like looking around you in this moment, wherever you are, like really look into something and just be like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity right now to have a privilege in life to even be able to listen to a conversation, like, you know, on your phone or on your laptop. Like, we are so blessed. We are in the top however many % of people right now because we have the privilege of that. There is so much to be grateful for. So yeah, I really buy into every day taking time to be grateful, because you will experience more awe in those moments.
And I believe it's a skill to be cultivated. And I think that it is, and you're saying that make it like sort of a connection in terms of, because we are so privileged, right?
Yeah.
We haven't been taught all the grateful stuff. So that's when, you know, the dark side to that is just entitlement, expectation, come now, do all these things, whatever it is, and you just forget. Then you caught up on yourself and you're like, oh, I was such a dick because I wasn't grateful for this. You do get sick and you're like, oh, someone fixed me already, you know what I mean? It's 2022 and someone already fixed me.
Right.
And
I think, like, if you are like having a moment where you're feeling not as grateful, like, just get outside of yourself. Like, I was reading something recently just about the power of a smile and how, like, just you smiling to another person can bring so much joy into both of your lives. And that can be to a stranger as well. And it's just like, we don't need to overcomplicate things. There are things that are free and available to all of us that we can do right now that provide us with a sense of like connection and purposeness to like be able to like lean into, rather than thinking that like I don't have the tools to be able to get myself to be happy, or, you know, whatever it is that you are seeking.
And is that what you think it is to, you know, be human?
This aspect?
Yeah.
To be human for me, and obviously, you know, my podcast is on this, and for anyone that hasn't listened, at the end of the conversation, every single person I ask, what does it mean to you to be human? It's something that I'm still familiarizing myself with. But I think where I'm at the moment is this aspect of self-exploration and of like coming home to your essence. It's an aspect of self-expression, of being able to go out into your life and be that person and take action as that person. And it's the aspect of kind of self-expansion that, like, you know, we can really lean into expanding our sense of potential. But in that, in our creation of that, there is a sense of contribution that comes with that.
What do you mean?
About whatever it is that you are here to do, if it's truly, this is my belief, if it's truly in alignment with who you are, there will always be an aspect of giving back. There will always be an aspect of humanizing people, of connecting with people, and in line with sort of making the world a better place. I really believe that. And it's a fascinating question. There are patterns that come with this answer. I've interviewed over 70 people, and so far it's the common answers are to experience the full spectrum of emotion, which I just love. I think that's so beautiful, because I think in this day and age we're so caught up in this idea of like happiness and
we're scared to feel.
Yeah, go there. And it's okay to feel sad at times. It's okay to feel angry. Like there's purpose for these, but
it's okay to fail too.
It's okay to fail. Like it's anything. It's okay, but the important thing in that is if they are negative emotions, don't live there. Give yourself the space to work through it, but don't live there. And if it's something like a sense of failure, grow, learn, try again. It's okay. The other one is kind of this idea of expanding your potential. And then this always plays into the idea of contribution. And that's, it's just over 70 people. It's not a lot, but it is fascinating that it's enough people to start seeing
70 people was
themes.
A lot of people.
Well, it's amazing. And it's beautiful to see, because I think it's this these are all people from all different walks of life. But when you ask that question, these are the things that they're saying, that it's okay to feel, that it's important to contribute back to your society. I think they're really, really beautiful themes.
It's sort of almost like a good blend of the individual and the group.
Yeah.
It's sort of, what it seems to me like. I think we get so focused on the individual.
Absolutely.
Not like a bad way or anything.
No. Well, it's a very protective thing, isn't it? It's like, I always I like sort of moving through life questioning, am I living in a state of disconnection or am I living in a state of connection? Because at any point I am in a state of disconnection, I am trying to protect myself. And so if you and I are having a conversation and I'm trying to protect myself, I'm not thinking about you, I'm thinking about me. That doesn't mean I'm present. That doesn't mean I'm open for connection. I've been reading a lot more into loneliness at the moment. And it's quite fascinating because we are a social species. It's been proven that, we are, even in terms of health. There was a statistic I heard actually this morning. They were talking about what contributes to early death. And they said, I think, 5% contributes to early death if you live in a place with bad air pollution. 20% if you're obese. 30% if you sort of have long-term, let's say alcoholism, for example. 45% more likely for early death if you're experiencing loneliness.
Sort of makes so much sense, when you have a baby and it's like you got to cuddle them all the time.
Right.
If you don't touch a baby,
this is how we're wired to survive.
You just die.
But what's most important in that, and that I find interesting, going back to this idea of disconnection and connection, is that this isn't about physically being surrounded by people.
Yeah.
Because I think most of us do that pretty good.
Be so lonely, yeah.
Right, that's the loneliest place to be.
That's why people jump into group coaching and stuff.
Right.
Because that's
it's about the quality.
Yeah. It's
not the number. It's about the quality. And that was something that I really learned, even going back to these defining moments we were talking about earlier. It's when I used to go to work, I would be surrounded by all these people. And I would feel like I would know none of them. I would not feel connected with any of them. I didn't feel safe with any of them. And, talking scientifically, it was literally killing me. It was literally killing me. So it's important to be able to develop quality relationships with people. But sort of going back to what you were saying, Corey, it starts with yourself. If you don't have a good relationship with yourself, your perspective of your inadequacy will continue to show up in your relationships with others.
And you'll just be chasing things that you think you need.
Right.
But you don't actually need.
Which is extremely exhausting. It's that flow-on effect of okay, if I feel not enough, then I'm going to have a behavioral compensation that is like, you know, for example, like people pleasing.
Partying, drugs.
Right.
Alcohol.
But that's exhausting and futile because it's inauthentic to who you are. And then you seek relief through self-medication.
Yeah.
And all beknownst to you, you're literally harming yourself from a belief that you made up.
You know what's so funny is I see this so much in Overcome the Chaos. When people sort of at that stage where they haven't got the connection like with themselves, and they come into the program and we help them connect with themselves, and then all of their old like sort of superficial friends just sort of go,
fade away.
Then all these amazing opportunities just start walking into their life, and it's just happening again and again and again and again, and that just completely confirms it at a case study with funny how many people got in there now, but like, wow.
Right. The miracle of life when you open yourself up to the idea that you are fucking amazing and that you are enough and that you have like all the potential of the universe within you to get out there and like go out and get life and like do when you're living, like I really love the idea of like frequency precedes form. So it's like, what energy are you embodying? Because that's what you're going to attract.
Oh, so true. And I think it's so like, there's like a whole bunch of irony around that I think that it's like you have connection, but you have to forsake a certain type of connection to get a new type of connection.
Right.
And that's the scary part.
Yeah.
Like, that's the jump, because you're gonna have to let go of this connection, and then I'm gonna be alone, and I'm gonna be afraid, and it's gonna be scary. It happens when you have a break up with someone. It happens if you leave. You know, some people don't want to leave their jobs because they're like, oh, I have these connections and there's duty here to all these people. Sometimes duty and obligation to all these people for this connection that you think you value, but you don't. Right. You need to go out for yourself and then.
Right. Wow. And I love Gabor Mate talks about this. He talks about the idea that there are like sort of two human needs in the sense of relationships. One is attachment, sort of what we're talking about, and one is authenticity. But when our attachment is threatened, guess what's first to go?
Oh, authenticity. Oh, yes, that makes so much sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And like I've been there, like I'm on my 5th relationship now. But like certainly before this self-development work the last few years, we actually had this conversation in the car this morning. It was just like I forsaked everything to remain in certain relationships. Everything. I would state standards, but if they said no, that's okay with me. Because the pain and the fear of losing that connection, even if it was a very low level one, was worth more to me than being alone but being authentic.
Where do you think, like, for most people, like maybe even you can sort of speak about you on this one as well, it's like, where do you think that actual fear comes from? Like, because I'm assuming it may be the same place. I don't know if it's like from different places or from the same place.
What specific fear?
Yeah, in terms of like, where does that fear actually like come from?
Of separating yourself from people, or?
Of being like, oof. Because some people I know they'll just screw this. I'm out. I'm going to stick to my stuff. Other people, it's like, if I break this, like I feel like my whole life is going to come to an end. Especially people who've built businesses that they don't even like. Because there's a lot of people, or they've chased a career that they don't even like, and they're in this position, and it's like.
Well, what was really powerful for me is in understanding that any anxiety that I was experiencing was not my fear of the future, but my fear of the projection of the future. What really helped me with that, and I utilize this regularly, because I think it's a very human thing to be fearful of the future and that sense of uncertainty, that any moment now that I feel like that fear of uncertainty, I just go, pure possibility. Pure possibility. It changes the energy from fear to like opportunity of creation.
Ooh, I like that. And what do you mean by that? Because like, I felt like I could feel it when you said pure possibility, but I can't rationalize.
It's the idea that as humans, we are negatively wired, right? So it's like we will always first go to, unless like we're really like worked on it, we will always jump to worst case scenario, particularly when we're like risking something. But it's like, hey, there's like another opportunity over here that is pure possibility that anything could happen. All the positive things, all the best case scenario could happen for you. And, going back to this idea of frequency precedes form, what do you think your life is going to look like if you lived from the energy of anything is possible versus I'm afraid of everything? Like, they're two totally different ways of being. And like you got to see it from that angle, right? Is like,
oh, that influences so many decisions.
So much.
There's so much big click for me for all the people that I work with.
Is it? Yeah.
Because, because I do believe there's like a big goal just around the world of just like what success is, especially in westernized world. And it's like success. And from a masculine point of view, it's like we will get love if we have success.
Yeah.
So we want to succeed.
Yeah.
But we also want to give back. And that's like a proof to your manlyhood that you can.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get successful from the first thing that you said in terms of like afraid of everything.
Right.
And still get there.
Yeah.
But then you haven't changed.
And how's your health going? Like, what are the long-term effects of stress on your body?
Yeah.
Like, good luck in enjoying the fruits of life in your 50s and 60s. How many men have a heart attack these days? I just retired, and then they drop dead. Like, you're fooling yourself if you think that being driven by that, because that's actually something in terms of like, and I'm sure it's common for you, that I work with men, that is that this sense of inadequacy. Jenna, but what will happen to my motivation if I'm no longer driven by my sense of inadequacy?
I need this motivation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit. Like your ego is like literally like so fearful right now because we are on the edge of you letting go of that.
Oh, and so many men are attached to motivation as well.
Yes.
It's like, hey, it's okay not to be motivated for a little while.
Yes. But that's what happens in the burning of your ego. Like, I'm working with one guy at the moment, and he's like, he has everything, but he's in it. And he's like, I feel lost. I feel like I'm losing my sense of purpose. Like, I just don't know what to do. I'm like, stop searching, start exploring, go out and have some fun, try things, enjoy life. Like, people are so afraid because for a lot of us, we've never experienced that.
And they feel guilty is one thing. Sorry, I had to chime in on there because, oh my God, this is just speaking to my soul right now. It's like people feel guilty to celebrate themselves as well.
Right. I love that you mentioned that recently. As you know, I did a human connection vulnerability kind of group retreat day with 5 very high achieving men. And one of the questions I asked them was, what are you proud of? And there was one man that just continually insisted that he wasn't proud of anything. He doesn't value being proud. And I mean, it wasn't a coaching session, so I couldn't go into it with him right then and there. But I wanted to know, like, at what point in your life did you decide that it wasn't important to be proud of yourself? What? Right? Here you are achieving all this stuff and providing, but you are withholding that gift of celebration for yourself.
And he wanted to be proud of himself, I'm assuming.
Course. Yeah. Of course.
And
why do we do all of this?
Every single guy that I have ever speak to, and there's been hundreds on the phone, one question they ask is, and what are things that you want to feel before you die? And they all say, I want to get to that stage of my life, I'm not living with any regrets, and that I've made it, and I feel content, and that, I can just look back and just be proud.
Yeah.
Every time. And then give love as well. And receive, and you'll learn how to receive.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They're the main ones.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. What else did you sort of learn from that?
From the group day?
Yeah.
Well, the way that I kind of structured is, I did a pre-questionnaire, so I sort of knew what I was going into with them all. But something that I really like talking about and that I spoke with them about is like the first moment in your life that you began to feel not enough. And like, talk to me about that experience. Because I think it really humanizes us because we've all had it. Like, even someone that you're intimidated by, like, that person at some point in their life has gone from a state of feeling worthy to unworthy. And what happens with these high achievers, that the question following that is, how have you compensated for that? And these men, it's just overachieving. And sort of going back to what we said, it's like, okay, well, we don't have regret for these things. These things have provided a service for us. But at the time in your life that this state of awareness comes into being, you have to reflect on whether you want to take that opportunity to start creating and living your life from a better state. Because as we're sort of like going back to, it's like living from this stress-fueled state will impact your health, and it certainly will impact your relationships.
It's like, what's the point otherwise?
Right. But as you know, when you're in that trance, if you've been doing it for so long,
I like to say possessed is my word.
Possessed?
Like
yes.
yeah.
Like, you're not aware. And that's why I sort of, lent on the idea of awareness, because most of us live in a really unaware state. Like, I know for me, it's like I'm a lot more intentional with my awareness, but I still have my blind spots. And like, it might seem obvious to you or I, these things, but they're not always obvious to us. So it's kind of like, that's why I loved asking these questions to them, because I think 4 out of the 5 men weren't aware of that. They were like, and you can see them starting to recalibrate a bit, being like, oh my God, like that day that, I got dropped from the football team and I was really, really embarrassed, or that day that the teacher put me at the front of the class and embarrassed me and told me I wasn't smart enough. Like, we all have these stories, right? But it's so profound at how that one moment in your life when you're so young changes the rest of your life.
And that's not just for men as well. That is for girls.
Everyone. Being human. Like, absolutely. Like, for me, like it was, we're going back to the story of like studying law and politics. It's like, I grew up in single mom, only child, poor family. And so really quickly I realized that like on sort of the social hierarchy like level, like I was down the bottom. But what I learned is if I could be smart, I could move up that hierarchy all on my own. And if I could perform athletically, that got me up even higher, right? So it's like, then I adapted. All right, so who am I? I'm a really intelligent person that is a high achiever, and I'm also really good at sport. And then like, look where my life goes.
It's too masculine.
It's super masculine, right? But it had to be, because it was a state of protection for me, because otherwise I'm this poor little girl that people are making fun of, that no one thinks that they can get anything from. And they think that, it's in their best interest to separate themselves from me and make fun of me. And I'm that person.
And you did the exact same thing of being like, fuck that. I'm not that weak
right.
little girl. I'm going to do this,
Look at me. This. I can get out of this, because I felt like I had no control. I was a little girl. I couldn't go and work. But I did what I had to do to survive. And that's what I think we all have to understand, is that these things served us. Like, thank you, beautiful little girl. Like, you go, girl. Like, you did what you needed to do to stay as safe as you could. You did that. But you're no longer a little girl. You're no longer a little boy. Stop being driven by that part of you that got hurt. Embrace it. Love it. It will always be a part of you, but it is not you. And I think that's really important, is that when we do this work, Corey, some of us get sort of stuck in the place of thinking that that's us still. It's not. It's a part of you that you will hold forever. And it will pop up at random times and it'll scare the shit out of you. But it's an opportunity for you to love and embrace it, and to realize that you're an adult. You can look after yourself. You are okay. You are safe. And you are enough.
And for everyone who's listening, where can they find you?
I'm trying to get onto social media a bit more. I have resistance to it. Where am I? I'm probably mainly on Instagram, which is at Jenna, JENNAH _Louise, LOUISE. Or I have a podcast called To Be Human, which is obviously on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
Yeah. And I like to leave all the listeners with like a little challenge for everything that we sort of just talked about, in terms of something that they can take action on. It could be a podcast that you've done. It could be, something that you're doing. It could be a challenge for them to do today, this week, next month. In terms of in your own mind, what would you like to challenge the listeners to take action on?
I think this goes back to something that I mentioned earlier in the podcast, the Peter Crone quote. Life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. So my action on that would be, from here on in, for the next week, at any moment that you are triggered, I want you to take a moment and I want you to start exploring, what is this saying about me? Instead of blaming others, projecting onto others, what is this saying about me? Get really real with yourself. Like lean in, get raw, get emotional, and start processing it and start working on it.
Wow.
Love you.
We got there.
Woo!